As many of you know, Major General Sidney Shachnow is no stranger to the Special Forces community or to the Army. His career has spanned over 37 years in a variety of command and staff positions, to include 5 years as an enlisted soldier. This man has experienced oppression firsthand, which makes him cherish even more the freedoms and liberties he now possesses as a soldier and as a citizen of the United States. What follows is a brief look into the unique background of a European immigrant who one day became a general officer in the United States Army. Born in Kaunas, Lithuania, November 23, 1934, General Shachnow was imprisoned during World War II in a concentration camp for 3.5 years before he was liberated by the Soviet Army. He lived in Europe until he emigrated to the U.S. in 1950. General Shachnow attended Franklin Technical Institute in Boston, Massachusetts, and graduated from the University of Nebraska, where he majored in business administration. He earned a Master's of Science degree in Public Administration from Shippensburg State College in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. He enlisted in the Army in January 1955, where he took his basic combat training and advanced individual training as part of the 87th Infantry at Fort Riley, Kansas. He remained there for 2 years as a light vehicle driver, a scout driver, rifleman, and a senior rifleman. He rose in the ranks to Sergeant First Class before attending Officer Candidate School and being commissioned a second lieutenant in the infantry in 1960. Over the past 30 years of commissioned service, his assignments have been as a commander or staff officer with infantry, mechanized infantry, air mobile, airborne, and Special Forces units. His most recent assignments include Commanding General of the U.S. Army Berlin in Berlin, Germany, the Director of the Washington Office of the United States Special Operations Command, as Chief of Staff and Deputy Commander of the 1st Special Operations Command Airborne at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He is a resident graduate of the Infantry Officer Basic Course, Special Forces Qualification Course, Infantry Officer Advanced Course, Army Command and General Staff College, and the Army War College. General Shachnow's decorations include the Distinguished Service Medal, the Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, the Defense Superior Service Medal, the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star with 2 Oak Leaf Clusters and V device, the Purple Heart with Oak Leaf Cluster, the Meritorious Service Medal with 2 Oak Leaf Clusters, 12 awards of the Air Medal, the Army Commendation Medal with 2 Oak Leaf Clusters and V device, the Combat Infantryman Badge, Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry, Master Parachutist Badge, Special Forces Tab, and the Ranger Cap. General Shachnow and his wife, the former Arlene Armstrong of Salem, Massachusetts, have 4 daughters. They understand and appreciate the hardships and sacrifices that soldiers and their families endure while in the Army. He knows the importance of the family's role as part of the Special Forces team and the contributions the families continually make to the overall success of the Special Forces Command. And now meet the Commanding General of the United States Army Special Forces Command, Major General Sidney Shachnow.
Hi. I appreciate having the opportunity to communicate directly with the Special Forces soldiers, regardless where they are at this point in time. And it is through this medium of technology that it is possible to do that. Because physically, it is almost impossible for me to reach each and every soldier as geographically dispersed as we are. I would like to take this opportunity and talk to you about Special Forces and our future. Now, to talk about Special Forces of our future, we must first recognize that we do not operate in isolation. We should be very much aware of the environment that we have to operate and that has a direct impact on what we do, how we do it, and how well we'll be resourced. So when we look at the environment at this point in time in history, we have to recognize the changes that are taking place domestically and politically right here in this country. This is an election year, and many decisions that will be made because of political considerations. And one can very easily read and see right now that the average citizen in this country is not too concerned about defense, but it is more concerned about the economic situation that exists in this country. The handwriting is on the wall. Our budget will be shrinking, and we will have to do with less. That will also impact on this community. Another factor is the fact that communism, as an ideology, has lost its appeal. It is crumbling. And communism was our ideological enemy out there. And that is impacting on the structure and the focus of our Department of Defense. The Warsaw Pact, which was our worst-case scenario that we may have to face, has disintegrated. No more. We justified our budgets, our equipment, the tanks, the Bradleys, based on the fact that we may have to face a very sophisticated Warsaw Pact force that could attack on very short notice. That is no longer the case, and it will have a significant impact on us. The growing roles of Germany and Japan are quite evident. Japan has always been recognized as an economic power. And now the changes that have taken place in Germany, Germany is an economic leader in Europe. Due to unification, Germany is larger geographically, located in a very strategic area in Europe with great resources that will dominate Europe and will have a significant role to play in European security. The leadership that we exerted in Europe in past years and the influence that we had, we will now have to share and do a heck of a lot more consulting with other nations. The economic power is now more evident and more important than ever before in our recent history. The shift to market economies and democracy is now a major activity in every continent on this globe. You can see in Eastern Europe the effect it is having as they're trying to establish democracies, as they're trying to establish market economies, and the turmoil that it is creating there, and the impact it is having on peace and stability in the world. And we have to recognize those changes. We have to see what is happening in Poland, in Czechoslovakia, in the old Soviet Union, as we knew it before. In Latin America, the changes that are taking place there. At one time, Latin America was predominantly run by dictators. There's only one left, Fidel Castro. All the rest of the countries are in some stages of democracy and instituting economic changes into an open market. Security alliances are also changing. I know that in 1944, if somebody would have said that we were going to be very strong allies with Japan and Germany, most of the people would have looked upon you as probably being out of touch. But it did happen. Some of our strongest allies at this point in time and in recent history has been Germany and has been Japan, at one time our enemies. Recently in the Gulf, we aligned ourselves with countries that previously we were on very unfriendly terms. And so these changing alliances are taking place and will continue to take place in the future. And we have to recognize the flexibility and the dynamics in this arena. Predominance of economic strength, I touched on it a little bit, but we can see what happened to the Soviet Union. There was a country with a large army, but the economic strength, the foundation of a great country, was not there, and consequently it collapsed. Economic strength is a prerequisite for greatness. New Europe. Europe is changing. With all the turbulence and all the trials and tribulations that change brings about. Look at Yugoslavia. For all its ills, communism did suppress some of these tendencies. And now that communism is gone, you can see these nationalistic and regional conflicts surfacing. And Yugoslavia is a good case in point. Coalitions, changing coalitions, and a new Europe is something that's going to impact on us also. Anything we are going to do nowadays in the security arena, we will not go it alone. We'll be working with other countries, with other people in a coalition trying to achieve peace and stability in the world. So these are some of the changes, certainly not all of them, that we must recognize as the environment around us changes and as we are required to operate and effectively contribute to the national security and protect and defend the interests of this country. Now, in light of those changes, we have different kind of challenges that Special Forces will be involved with, challenges that our Defense Department will have to deal with. And without going into great lengths, I would just like to mention some of them. Illicit drugs. We're very much involved in it in Southcom, but also to some degree in PACOM. It is threatening our very basic values. It is a serious problem for this country because for some reason there are countries out there that have learned to live with drugs. It is part of their culture. Drugs in the Incas' culture is something that has been there. There are other countries that manage to live with drugs, but in our society it is presenting serious, serious problems. And we have been called upon to contribute in fighting this problem and the associated criminal elements that are involved. National rivalries, they're still out there. Economic austerity. You know, half the world is dieting and the other half the world is starving. You've seen pictures of famine in Africa. Children with just skin and bones. Right now there's a massive aid effort going on for the old Soviet Union to make sure they make it through the winter. That is a serious problem. Religious tensions. There's still a great distrust for fundamentalism. Ethnic antagonisms, they're still out there. Immigrations and refugees, and the associated xenophobia that goes with it. Personal and lingering authoritarianism. It's still out there, guys like Saddam Hussein. Democracy and freedom is not operating in every corner of this world. Arms control and the associated problem with spreading weaponry, sophisticated weaponry. Right now we're very concerned where some of the technology and some of the weapons out of the old Soviet Union is going to go to. and hopefully would not land into the wrong hands. And if it does, what will they do with it? All this spells out a great deal of uncertainty and a great deal of ambiguity. And that's what it means to us, that the enemy is not going to be that clearly defined. You will not be able to count on an order of battle units and numbers. It is a heck of a lot more ambiguous and more difficult to manage. Now, within all this, where are we in Special Forces? And what does the immediate future hold for us? Well, one, I think we're a pretty stable force. We're not going to experience any dramatic changes. There are going to be some changes, some minor adjustments. Some of those changes most likely will take place in the reserves and fewer changes in the active component. We're going to be reasonably equipped. We're not going to have everything we want, but we don't need that. We are not a high-tech organization. Those of you who are familiar with Fort Bragg, we have a demonstration here. We're out in the plaza. We send out an operational aid detachment, and we lay out about a half a dozen sheets of plywood. And on that plywood, we lay out some of the equipment that we normally operate with. And behind that sheet of plywood stands a Special Forces soldier. Many visitors quite frequently are surprised and disappointed when they look down on that panel and they do not see any gee-whiz equipment. The first panel you normally come to is where the detachment sergeant, the operations sergeant, intelligence sergeant is standing there, and when you look down, what you see is a magnifying glass, simple equipment, compass, nothing that you cannot buy on our economy in a Kmart or Radio Shack. As you move down where the medic is, a few knives and tweezers and bandages. The weapons sergeant has a big display of some old antique weapons that time has passed by. When you go to the demo sergeant, it shows you an electrical kit and a non-electrical kit. The radio man, that's probably the most technological panel you're going to see. And even there's nothing that will cause you to gasp. But if you're concentrating on the panel and the equipment, then you're making a serious mistake. Because our investment is in the soldier standing behind that panel. That's our bread and butter. We are not a high-tech outfit. And so equipment, we're in pretty good shape. Now, we're going to continue to stay and modernize, but there's going to be no gee-whiz changes. Those pieces of equipment that we will purchase in the out years will probably be of high quality, but not in the quantities that we probably need. In other words, if a Special Forces group with 54 ODAs requires 54 widgets, we'll probably buy 20, and we'll share it and move it around so everybody can train and deploy with it. We may not be able to afford to buy one for each ODA. And those kind of economies we will have to institute in our community. But that should not have an effect on our readiness and our capability. We will be primarily engaged in what is now labeled peacetime engagement. Peacetime engagement, regardless how you define it, is something short of open hostilities. Desert Storm is an isolated instance. Our day-to-day activities is going to be security assistance, working various issues, something short of major conflict and confrontation. And we need to be aware of that because it requires different kind of skills to be employed in that arena. At the same time, we need to be prepared for a worst-case scenario in case hostilities do start. There'll be good career opportunities in Special Forces.